Just leave me in angst. Just leave me here. This is where I want to die. Just smother me with angst. Everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Romance and the Monsters. I'm M.
I'm S.
I'm Seff.
This week we are talking about a very special book, Slow Heat by Leta Blake. And this book is special because it's actually in part the reason why we started a podcast in the first place.
Yes.
It is. It's
a ride.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely a ride. I hope you're ready. If you read it, I hope you're not scarred for life. I hope you discovered a genre of romance that you didn't know existed. And let me tell you, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Mpreg is a lot of fun.
It's not fun, if you catch my meaning.
Puns.
There are probably going to be a lot of knot and nodding jokes in this episode. So
for sure. For sure.
Beware.
Let all the puns out. Seff, what is this book about? if you can pull this one off.
Do tell us, please.
So, just picture the future. All the women have died. I think they died of like a disease or just something. Mm-hmm. All the women are gone. There's only men left on this earth. And they had to find a way to genetically alter men so that they could bear children and continue this human race, you know, if you catch my meaning.
So they have a uterus. Men have a uterus in this universe.
They have a uterus. Yes, they do. A womb. Everything that a woman needs to have a child. Obviously, minus the vagina. But, I mean, I'm butchering this synopsis because I really can't.
Okay, essentially, let's start with what Mpreg is and means, and then maybe try to explain what the story is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Okay,
yeah.
So Mpreg comes from, is it a part of Omegaverse? I don't think it's the entirety of Omegaverse because there's MF in Omegaverse, I believe.
Yeah.
And so Mpreg is sort of like a subgenre of that, which means you have alphas, betas, and omegas. Mm-hmm. In this world, because everyone's a man, you have omegas, betas, alphas. Betas are essentially infertile. Yeah. So the government in this story, in this world, is extremely strict. It's like the government is under the sheets with you. There's rules for everything. Betas are forbidden from having any types of relationships with other people. So, like, they can't have relationships with omegas or alphas, just between betas. Omegas can't have relationships between them. Alphas can't have relationships, especially sexual relationships with another alpha, because that's like seen as
like taboo, illegal.
Because you can't procreate. Like, the whole point of this world, this government is really pushing for procreation and like essentially birth control or any type of contraception is essentially forbidden. Like, it's completely against the law. So in this story, you have Val and Jason. Jason is a 18-year-old guy. He's in college. He's learning. He's an alpha, and he's learning about omegas. Essentially, like he's learning how to take care of an omega, especially during a heat, because in Omegaverse there's what we call a heat, and there's what we call knotting, and it's all fun and games, and it's, you know, it's how it works. Anyways, and Val is actually way older. He's like in his 30s?
I think he was 35
35,
or 36.
35.
So he's considered pretty old for an Omega. And so in this case, if you didn't guess that already, it's older Omega with younger Alpha, which didn't think I would love. Turns out I love it.
Same. I didn't think I'd like it either.
And Val was deeply emotionally and physically scarred by during one of his heats, he didn't have a partner. Is that what it was? He didn't have a partner, and so he ended up in a bar. Oh, he took a pill
To suppress his heat, basically.
Yes. Yes. So he tried to delay his heat.
Yeah, and it also made him like insatiable. Like he needed a lot of knots.
And how it's explained in the book is that essentially kind of like as a girl or as a woman, I guess, when you delay your period, it always comes back with a vengeance the next time because, I don't know, I guess it's your body just saying like, bitch, I needed this. Yeah. So he did that. He delayed his heat. So then the heat was even worse the next time, and that's why he ended up in a bar, and he was, again, deeply scarred by a bunch of alphas who really mistreated him and just like used him.
Yeah, it was more or less like a gang rape, which I feel like
Exactly. I mean, yes, it was kind of exactly that. Like he wasn't physically or mentally capable of saying no.
Yeah, and which I just think was pretty.
It was horrifying. So how they meet is Val is this professor. I'm sorry, I'm literally taking up your job.
It's okay.
But do you want to go from there?
Sure.
How do they meet?
Okay, so Jason and his friend Zan are pretty much, young, horny alphas. They want their Omega so badly. Anyways, so they're just walking the halls, and Jason, so there's something called a aeroscape. Is that what it's called? But it's when it's like the ultimate pair, like you're compatible, like in everything. So Jason, the Omega, scents and feels his mate, his aeroscape,
it's a soulmate,
or
essentially. It's a soulmate.
Yeah. And then that literally sends him into like a horny mess. He literally attacks Val, who pretty much like has written off ever finding his alpha because, he's 35, probably can't carry children.
And he's in a relationship with, an older alpha as well, who has lost his own mate, so it kind of works perfectly for them.
Yeah. And anyways, it's just, the story starts there, more or less. Like, I don't even know, like, how do we touch upon this?
I know that it sounds absolutely wild and crazy and like it would just be a book of sex. I get it.
But it wasn't.
However, it is not.
No.
It's absolutely not. The concept of it is absolutely wild, but it is one of the most emotional, angsty books I have ever read, especially one of the most well-written romance novels.
Hands down, I agree.
Agreed.
I agree.
The way Leta Blake created these characters, crafted them, the depths of them, and just how it's written, it's just so great. Like, you feel every single emotion that they have, and I swear to God, it really is an emotional book. Is there like a lot of horniness in this book?
Yes,
there is. but it's just I feel like it's.
I think Leta Blake did such a good job of balancing the horny with the emotion. Like, she honestly did a good job. Where, like, you wanted them to, finally go through, like, a heat, but you also wanted to see them reach that ultimate emotional level of them realizing, oh, wait, I love this person. Like, I just felt like their journey to love and to sex, like, it was just amazing. And obviously they go hand in hand, but, like, I just loved the relationship of Jason and Val, and I didn't think I was, as like Marge said, that it was, he was an older Omega and Jason was the younger Alpha, which I thought was an interesting power balance, I would say. Like, I thought it was very interesting, and I thought it would have been a bigger issue, but in the story itself, while society...
I mean, it is.
Yeah, society itself...
It is a big issue in the story.
No, I meant, like, like, between each other, like the whole idea of like, oh, I can't be, I mean, it was, but like after they got over that hurdle, it wasn't really that big of an issue. But I meant like in terms of like mentally being able to handle each other. I felt like I thought they wouldn't be able to, but then they actually were able to handle their emotional scars.
I mean, this book actually does a lot of work as far as discussing things that you don't necessarily see in romance, period. Like subjects like abortion, subjects like contraception, subjects about like governments and laws, and especially laws that are trying to control omegas, which obviously is kind of all a metaphor for how women are treated and how women are constantly, you know, being like told you can't do this, you must do that, your body doesn't belong to you, you can't decide if you want an abortion or not. You know, you get my point. And you kind of touched upon this, but another subject, which is in relation to abortion and stuff, is this issue of age between Val and Jason, because obviously Jason is very young, and so he has his old life in front of him. Like, he's never been traumatized the way that Val has, and so there's this whole question for Val of, well, I've lived through stuff that have made me not want kids. Probably can't have kids either, you know, because that's another question in the book, is being infertile, or you know, because he's so scarred at this point that he probably can't have kids.
But even if the men aren't scarred or weren't, you know, brutally attacked the way Val was, it's still hard for them to have children and carry them and survive because of the, you know, if they reach a certain age, their body can't handle
Their body wasn't made for this.
Exactly. They weren't made for it. And obviously they were genetically altered to carry babies. So I could imagine that being a certain age would make that harder for them to have the children that they want and that they need.
Especially with the Jason's parents, how they gotten older and like what they go through as well.
Yeah, it's every single character I feel in this book opens a conversation about something.
Yes. And I felt like this book, like every situation had a purpose in the sense of like furthering the story, but also like enlightening the readers about this complex world that Leta Blake created.
So essentially Val just, his issue with Jason is that Jason is so young that he's afraid that by being with him, by Jason being with him, he would rob him of an opportunity for kids and like a happy life. And
that was a big issue.
Well, I mean, it's like probably the biggest issue in the book, but anyway, we obviously have read this book before. This was not a first for anyone. So I don't know, like, should we still do like a review, or
I think we could say if we liked it or not, which
we obviously all loved it.
But I will say that I'm not someone that usually reads MM or even, you know, the Omegaverse or even, you know, Mpreg. It's not something that I usually read, and I only picked it up because M really like was vouching for this book and saying how amazing it was and how it'll make me feel everything, because I did want an angsty read when I asked for a recommendation. And this fulfilled my need for angst 100%. It was full of angst, and I just was like shocked and pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed this book as much as I did, because, as I said, MM is not something that I usually go for, not because like I don't like it, it's just I never really found a book that piqued my interest. Or like I haven't really explored that side of like romance fiction yet. But yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed this book.
Yeah, I found this book out of nowhere. I feel like I can't remember how I found it. All I know is that it wasn't my first Mpreg book, actually. But
really?
It wasn't? I thought it was. Yeah.
No, it wasn't, because the first one I read was very much what you would expect just thinking about Mpreg. Like, it was just, you know, a sex fest. Which, you know, it's fine. But it's not what I'm looking for in my fiction. Sorry.
I mean, sometimes you need a good smut.
Yeah. So then I found this book, and I started it, and I was like, within 10 pages, I was like, Okay, we are somewhere else here.
Oh, can we talk about the beginning?
Well, wait.
Okay.
So,
okay.
I mean, yes, wait. But I like you said, you were pleasantly surprised, and I feel like that's kind of just is how everyone kind of goes into this book expecting one thing and then coming out being like, wow, that was actually really good. Like, that was actually really deep.
I agree. I remember looking at the cover and I was like, Marge, you're just giving me some good smut, which I am not opposed to. But then I picked it up and opened it up, and sure, yes, the beginning was smutty. But then as you continue on, you're like, whoa, what a story.
And what about you, S? We'll jump into the first scene afterwards.
Well, like Seff, like I really enjoyed it. I felt like I enjoyed it a little bit more this time around.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, I really did. And there were some parts where I didn't remember. Like, I remember it in parts, but I didn't remember, like, you know, the order or how things went down. And then some things I didn't remember. So I found myself, like, really invested reading it again. And, like, Em was the one that recommended this book. And I remember starting it, and I was very scandalized because of the beginning. We'll get into it. Yeah. Because I was like, what the hell am I reading? Like, what is this? Like, I've read MM. I've read... And I think it's because of the fact that they're able to get pregnant. And then just the way that they explain everything and how they go about it and how they're taught, how the alphas are taught about omegas and like all that. Like, it was very different and I felt very scandalized.
It was very interesting because they started, like, the book literally started off with the alphas watching literally porn.
Yeah, on TV to learn how to take care of an omega. Yeah. And they're all horny in class.
Yeah.
They're all horny. Then that turns into us discovering that Xan and Jason, who are both alphas, have a relationship, a sexual relationship together because, and this is another interesting thing that, you know, this book is talking about, which is that Xan, who is born alpha, actually has always wanted to be an omega.
Yeah.
And so his relationship with Jason is that essentially Jason practices, if you will, on him, and that way Xan gets to live his own fantasy.
So I have a question about, real quick, let me interrupt. Do they ever touch upon how, when they're born, like, how do they know what they are?
Yeah, it's like, I think it's, in terms of their sizing.
But like, how is it that Xan is an alpha, but he has, you know, strong tendencies of being an omega? Like, how do they go about that? Like,
because he physically was born alpha. He has the alpha cock. And like he does have the urges, but he doesn't, like, he's never had that fantasy. His fantasy is being dominated by an alpha.
I think, I think I remember them saying that at a certain age they, like, present. Like, you just know at a certain age what they are. In terms of, like, they're down their size.
I think
but
they
also
literally measure them. They measure their penises at some point. I feel like they mentioned that. And that's
in the beginning, when Xan and Jason were, you know, going at it at the role playing, like, Jason literally measures their penises as they're, like, you know, beside each other.
So Xan has everything he needs to be an alpha, but when he does get a mate, he has no desire to be an alpha to his omega. Yeah. So, and, you know, that's an issue that's explored in another book in the series. But we're here to talk about Jason and Val. So, yeah, moving on from this opening of the book, which is, I will say, very shocking, but, like, in a great way.
Yeah, because I felt like Jason found Val pretty early in the book. Obviously, it's their story. But, like, his business with Xan and the relationship wasn't really over. And, like, it's just Jason became all about Val. And, like, it kind of, like, Xan just kind of was, like, pushed to the side, which obviously was heartbreaking because you knew that he was going through a lot of stuff and he needed his best friend. And also, like, he thought that, you know, Jason was going to be it for him for at least another few years until they were out of school. And it's just, it was heartbreaking to see his reaction to Jason bonding with Val.
And it was heartbreaking, too, to see Jason being so head over heels about, like, having found his mate and then his mate being I don't want to say cold, but like not super responsive,
Yeah.
you know? Like Val doesn't want him.
No.
And so Jason is put on, what do they call them? Like alpha quail. So that, you know, Jason can use his own brain, because when you find your mate, you just have one thing on the brain.
I got another head thinking for you.
But I mean, that was also super heartbreaking, because you see Jason's like longing for Val, and Val being like, no, but then you also understand why Val is saying no, because it's so well written that you completely understand where both of them are coming from, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought, like, Leta Blake did a good job of showing that, yeah, Jason yearns for Val, but at that point, it's just he yearns for his Omega, not for Val himself. But, like, as the story progresses, you realize, oh, wait, he also wants Val. And, like, it's because he realized, like, obviously, Val's more than just an Omega. He's an amazing person with his own thoughts and beliefs. And, yeah. Anyways, I just love their love story, okay?
There's a lot in this book about, like, Omega rights. You know, fighting for Omega rights and understanding that, like, Omegas are equals to Alphas.
Yeah, because there is that whole power imbalance between the Alphas and Omegas. Like, it's always there. It's been there, you know. Omegas can't control their sexual urges when the heat's happening, which we already know with Val. And it's just, like, that, I guess, in some eyes, that looks like they're lesser beings than Alphas. And it's just, yeah, as you said, in the book, it does deal with a lot of, like, Omega rights and a lot of Omega right movements and things like that. So I thought this book was so well written in the sense of ownership of, like, yourself. I thought this book did a good job of that.
It's very relatable too.
Yeah, and even like world building wise, this book does a lot of world building, and it does it really well. Where it's not an info dump, and you still feel like you know a lot about this world.
Yeah.
You know, but there's still room to explore some more with, like, you know, via other characters.
No, I was going to just bring it back to the beginning of the book with the whole sex education class with the alphas. Like, it was a smart way of, like, introducing readers to the world and, like, giving readers information. And it wasn't an info dump. It was actually a scene that we're experiencing for the first time, but we're also getting information about the alphas, omegas, and all of that. And I thought it was such a smart way for her to introduce the world instead of just dumping the information on us.
We're just such at odds with our world, where, like, a lot of schools are trying to ban sex ed, like, period. And then this is like the complete opposite, where it's like, here's porn, kids. Learn how to do it. But anyway, so Jason and Val essentially start a courtship, if you will.
Yes.
Where young Jason tries to woo Mr. Val. And there's this scene which I just adore. And it's the one scene, I think, or at least one of the scenes in this book that comes to me, like, that I remember the most is...
I know what scene you're gonna... Yeah, I know what scene.
The first time they meet after when they first meet in the school, the first time they meet afterwards.
Yeah.
And Jason can't approach Val because, like, his alpha urges or whatever, and Val is, like, in his home, and Jason just
is it the window
to
scene
him through the window.
Yeah, I love the window scene is actually marked as, like, one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It was just the sweetest, most softest scene.
Yeah.
Very Romeo and Juliet-esque with the window.
Jason is just like, what's your favorite color?
Oh, he's so pure.
And Val is like, he is such a baby. What I'm gonna do with him? But at the same time, he's like, he's adorable.
Yeah.
And Jason is just trying so hard to, you know, find out more about his mate and, like, you know, get started on a relationship of sorts. And, like, he's there against, you know, his parents, because his parents forbid him from seeing Val. But
I even think that scene brings back, like, an innocence to Val as well, because that's obviously not a question, like, he's probably obviously used to hearing at his age, like, on a date. But, like, I just thought it was so sweet. And, like, he actually went searching for the blue that he liked the best, and he went to find it. And, like, it was just such a touching moment between them.
Yeah, because in part, Jason's youthfulness that he brings to this relationship is what heals, or, you know, helps Val heal, because, you know, he's bringing back a lot of fun and a lot of just innocence to his life as someone who's been so jaded because of what happened to him.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of my personal favorite scenes.
Can we also talk about, I think in that scene we also get introduced to what Val, does. Like, what's his profession?
Do you mean his poems?
Yeah, he writes
I think that's
some,
later on in the book, but
sexy
yeah.
poems. No, it was when, I think it was right after that scene when he gets home and Jason is talking to his parents and they tell him, he writes poems, but you can't read them because they're all about, sexual situations.
Yeah. About his heats.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
beats.
But then Val is like, okay, I'll send you the less R-rated ones. But then when Jason is reading them, he's like, this is still about sex, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Val's like, yeah. So, okay, but that means that leads us into another favorite scene, which is a very hot scene in the book. And it's the
is
phone
it when
call
they do
scene.
the phone sex?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Because is Jason like doing his homework or whatever, and then like
Yes.
Val calls, or he calls Val?
No, Val calls.
Val calls him.
And they start chatting, and then that's when the poems come up, and that's where Jason is like, these are about sex, aren't they? I just love it. And then obviously horny stuff happens, like they start touching. No, do they start? Is Jason rubbing one?
They both are.
Yeah.
They both are? I don't remember if... Okay,
No, they both are.
know.
And then, that's when, Jason's like, wait, what are you doing? And then Val and him start, And then Jason, that's when you find out Jason has not when we find out, but when Val finds out that Jason has a pretty dirty mouth. And, Val was not prepared. He was like, wait, what? This is my alpha?
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty steamy.
Maybe there's a chance for us after all.
Mm.
Because, Val is like with this uber alpha man.
Yeah.
Hero? How do you pronounce
I
his name?
say Euro.
Euro.
I say Euro.
Euro.
Euro. Euro.
Euro. I think we'll say Euro. Who is an interesting character. He's someone you don't like at first in this book, but then you start seeing also where he comes from and how he's helping the situation and what he's done for both Val and then later on Jason's
His patter.
Yeah.
So they you have a father and you have a patter, and then the patter is essentially the omega in the relationship.
Yeah.
So what do you think of Hero?
I felt like, for me, when I first read this book, I didn't like him. There was no interest.
Even at the end?
A little bit, but no. But this second time around, I'm actually looking forward to trying to read his book again. Yeah.
I liked book 2. So what had happened was I picked up Slow Heat, but then I think chapter 2 in, I decided to read the synopsis of book 2. And then I realized, oh wait, it's Euro. Euro?
Mm-hmm.
However you say his name, it was his book.
Euro.
Let's just say
Euro. Okay.
Yeah.
It was Euro's book with Zan, and I was just so intrigued. So I think I kept a keener eye on him because I kind of wanted to know how he could possibly be the lead in the second book.
Y'all, get this. I just think Leta Blake is a genius. She's like, I have this young guy who's an alpha but has omega tendencies and wishes he could be an omega. And then I have this, older, hot, uber alpha male who is not in a relationship right now.
Who was a little bit snobby because he didn't
also has a little bit of a hero complex. You know what I mean? He likes saving people and knowing that he's the one who did it.
Yeah.
True.
And then she was like, how about I put these two together? And I was like, your mind.
No, and I'm telling you from now, the book 2 was pretty good. It was their romance. It was different, obviously, in the sense it's two alphas versus alpha and omega. Mm-hmm. But their story was so good and so well written and just so touching. Yeah, read book 2.
Yeah, which I guess would count as a polyamorous relationship, except that the Omega in that book is not, he's asexual, essentially. He's not, he's not attracted to, like, any of them, but he's in a relationship in the sense that, like, he's sort of,
but it's only a name.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I wouldn't say, like, it's, I was gonna say MOM. What?
Mom!
AOA, Alpha, Omega, Alpha.
So wait. So question. Wait, did you finish the second book, Marge, or no?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Because of the threesome. Anyways,
okay.
we're getting off topic.
No, it wasn't because of that. Because I was fully prepared to just skip over it. Because if you don't know this about me, I am not one for threesomes. I don't like them.
I'm telling you though.
But no, it wasn't. I know, but it's not the reason why I stopped reading. It's just because I got busy and I had to read like an arc or whatever. So I just.
But I'm still saying, I think the heat scene was like, you know, the threesome wasn't bad, and like I dug it a lot. Yeah, and I've heard some stuff about it that I was like, oh, okay, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued about that. But what I've read of it was like the beginning is like really heartbreaking. Like you think you sympathize, I guess, with Zan in this book, but wait till you get to his book and find out the extent of what this poor boy has gone through. Heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Zan and Hero,
but they were a big part in this story. Slow Heat, one being like best friends and also sexual partners of you know Val and Jason, but they also like were, well, at least Euro was a driving force in making Jason understand Val and on a deeper level. And I thought that was really important because at first I was like, wait, Euro's going to be that type of guy that tries to sabotage a relationship, isn't he? But after, you know, he realizes I had, you know, an Eriscape relationship, you know, or I don't know what it's called. He had his soulmate and he lost his soulmate pretty young. I forgot how old they were when they lost each other. Well, when his Omega died, but like...
Was it when he was giving birth?
Yeah, I believe so.
And then his baby was stillborn.
It's so heartbreaking.
Ugh. I know.
Everything's heartbreaking. Yeah. I swear to God, this book touches upon all the like subjects that could be sad.
Yeah,
it
really does.
But I mean, yeah, Euro was. I mean, for a part of the book, he was though the character that you think he's definitely trying to sabotage, like Jason and Val's relationship.
But he means well. He means well.
Yeah, no, in the end, he's fine. But there was one scene which I, probably for me, was one of the angstiest scenes in the book. And it's when they have dinner at Val's, and Hero is there, the beta friend whose name I can't remember is
Rosen
there.
And Yusuf.
With his husband. And then Jason is there too, and they're all talking amongst themselves, and Jason is just sitting there quiet because he feels so young and he doesn't understand what they're talking about, or he doesn't know how to, you know, talk to or whatever, like find his place in this like little group of friends that's so tightly knit together. And it's just so heartbreaking because it's from his POV, and he's just oh, you're just like, baby, I just want to hug you. Like, you deserve a place here.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's a scene where Jason is like, well, maybe I, like, don't have a place here. Maybe I shouldn't be here. And Hero is making it worse. Hero is like, in that scene, Hero is like, you see, you don't belong here. And I was like, bitch, I'll beat you.
But wait 1 second. That's when Euro was like, yo, I don't, like, agree with, I forgot what he was talking about, but I think it dealt with, like, whatever, when your heat is just, you know, too much. Like, you're, what is it called? It's not nymphomania. There was something else. You know, when, like,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, but I need everyone else to know what I'm talking about. What is it called?
Yeah, it's nymphomania, interminable heat.
There you go. Anyways, he was talking about that, and then Jason like just corrected him right off the bat, and he's like, "Nuh-uh, it's the new term now, interminable heat." And then or Euro just looks at him, and then Val just looks at him as well, and is like, "Whoa, I'm impressed," because like he kind of like, you know, while he was feeling out of the inner circle, he still voice his own opinions and, like, in that sense, won Val over in that situation.
Yes, but it was still very angsty.
Yeah, no, are you kidding? That scene was angsty AF.
And he got jealous too. Yeah.
Like, I felt that scene.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we've all been in a situation where you're with people that you just don't really connect with.
Oh, yeah.
Or you don't know how to connect with them, and you're just sitting there and you feel so excluded.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I felt the way she wrote that scene.
No, I agree.
So relatable.
I was trying to find you a silver lining, though, Marge, so you didn't feel so heartbroken.
I know. Just leave me in angst. Just leave me here. This is where I want to die. Just smother me with angst.
But can I also just say that I love how Val was like, yeah, I can't cook for shit. No, everyone else was like, Val can't cook for shit, so don't expect anything from him. But then Val's like, no, I can do something. Like, I can do something. And, like, his place is also, like, a pigsty. His fridge is empty. And, yeah, it was so funny. I was dying. I was like, Val, sometimes for me.
Can we talk about how Jason goes over and fixes up his garden?
Oh,
He cleans up. Yes. I love that. That is so cute.
That makes for a lot of lusty scenes.
Yeah.
Where it's like, can't have it yet, but like thinking about it a lot.
When he jumps through the window?
Val is just constantly dripping all over the place. All right.
Right? I'm like, whoa, this slick.
Omegas have a way of, getting ready for an alpha.
Easing the way in, if you catch my drift.
Essentially. I mean, they get wet, all right? And it's called slick. But it's, like, dripping all over the place in this book. And, we'd love to see it. Quite honestly.
We really do.
And I love that Jason can, like, smell it. And then it just sends him into, like, overdrive. Despite him using alpha suppressants, he's like, oh my god.
Jason is just constantly hard. Val is just constantly dripping all over the place. And then in the midst of that, they're just having, like, the most angsty encounters. And it's... What else can you want? Truly. Like, when I started this book, I really did not expect the sex to come in as late as it did. Like, it really is at the end of the book.
The 90%
mark.
95% mark, I think it was.
Like, can you imagine? Like,
are you? No. They have sex.
No, they don't. Their first time is the heat.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Yes.
No, it wasn't.
The first time they have sex is during his heat.
Yeah.
Period, full stop, the end. Don't debate on this.
Okay, it was when he was starting to go into his heat, but it was at his place when Jason went over it and was talking about, like, how, oh my gosh, my patter is pregnant. And then it kind of starts, like, Val's heat was, like, kind of starting, but not really. But, like, they had sex.
No. They maybe fooled around, but I swear to God, their first time is during his
read
heat.
it. I am telling you, I read that book recently, and they had sex. Can
you're
you fact check,
of
please?
The truth. What is it?
I think they just messed around. From what I remember, it's just...
I remember Jason pulling Val onto him. He's sitting, and he's like, it's your choice. Or not pulling him, like, Val walked up, and he was like, Jason's like, it's your choice. I'm sitting. You decide if you want to sit on my dick or sit somewhere else. And Val sat on his...
This book is so hot.
Dick. And they did it.
Yeah, you know what? I think they did. Because they're sitting on the wingback chair.
Mm-hmm. Who was right?
It says, okay, I'm going to read
How
a little.
How did I not remember this? I swear to God, I thought their first time was his heat.
I'm going to read a little.
Read it to me, yes?
His cock. Stop!
Try to read it with a straight face.
It says his cock throbbed against Val's prostate and omega gland, sending another anal orgasm crashing through him. Harsh waves of bliss racked him. He convulsed through it, weak as a kitten in its aftermath. They panted together in the chair with Jason's cock deep inside him.
So, unless Jason's dick is inside Val's fist, I mean, it is somewhere deep inside.
Speaking of fists.
Oh, yes!
Speaking of fists.
I will say, I
Yes.
was really mad that we didn't get a scene of fisting, you know?
I mean, we did, though. I mean, did we?
They
talk
talked about it.
Because
Jason was like, okay, like, you know, I can't satisfy you all the way. I get tired. How about we try my fist? And then Val was like, oh, okay. And then that's it.
Yes, but also they learn that by fisting, that's a great way to help stretch Val's uterus
Scar tissue.
to make it better, to stretch the scars.
I will say,
Yeah.
did you read their novella? Any of you?
No, because I didn't want to get spoiled about book 2.
Oh. There is some fisting in that one. So if you were worried you didn't get any in this one, you get it in the novella.
These books are great, guys. Another heartbreaking thing in this book, because the book is just full of them.
This book is just one full heartbreak.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes, exactly. Is that it just literally breaks your heart in pieces, and then at the very end it puts it back together, and with like a nice little bow. Is that Jason's patter gets pregnant, but that's extremely dangerous for them because he could die.
Because one, they're pretty old. Like, they're older than childbearing age usually, but the government also doesn't really restrict pregnancies like they do, but the quality of condoms that they give them is pretty awful. And, like, also, his patter is allergic to them.
Such interesting details that are just sprinkled all over this plot, the plot of this book. Like, who would have thought, oh yeah, I'll make the patter allergic to this contraception. Like, yes, Leta Blake, thank you. This is just amazing. Because some people really are. Some people really are. Have you ever seen that in a romance novel before?
No, not at all.
Oh, sorry, I'm allergic to condoms? No. So great.
But, like, I just think it's, like, awful in that, like, sense where the government won't stop the pregnancies despite like, their omegas, not all, but, like, a lot of their omegas passing away from childbearing and also, like, giving birth because it's such a difficult situation to be in. And, like, the government just disregards omegas like they're nothing.
Even if it's a life or death situation, the government would rather omegas get pregnant than save them.
Exactly.
And for Jason's patter, it's a case of life or death. He can't have kids. I believe that Jason's pregnancy, like the pregnancy with Jason, was really hard on him or whatever.
Well, Val?
No, Jason's patter.
Oh, okay, yeah. Jason's patter. Yeah, it was pretty hard. And also, birth control is illegal. And I think that's insane. But yeah, birth control is illegal. And even morning after pill is pretty much illegal. So
it just feels so current. You know what I mean? Like, you can't read this book and not think of what's going on in our current world. You know, how, like, some of the laws that people are trying to pass and how it affects usually only one, portion of the population, and like how you can't see the issues in this book and not think of how women are treated. Yeah.
Agreed.
But anyway, so Minor gets pregnant and chooses to keep the baby, despite the fact that Jason is horrified because he knows that means his batter is probably going to die. And the father is just like, whatever. The father is a little bit old school, I guess. Yeah. Like, he's a bit more conservative. Which, again, interesting, because the patter is, like, really liberal and, like, we have rights, and the father is a little bit more conservative. So, I don't know. And then, how do we get from I'm keeping the baby to need to have an abortion?
At the end of the book, he just started miscarrying. His patter just started miscarrying, and then the baby, for some reason, it punctured his colon. And the baby was also stuck.
Oh my God.
And so he was bleeding out. And it was, like, brutal. Like, reading about it, it was so graphic and so hard to read and heartbreaking, obviously, because Jason's watching his patter basically die right in front of his eyes. And he needed the help. And obviously we knew that Euro had not the ability, but he was doing illegal abortions.
He's helped a few omegas through that before.
Yeah. And so
because what happens at the same time is that Val is going through his heat. It's
exactly,
happening
and it's
right
an
then and
intense
there.
heat.
And then at the same time, Jason's patter is miscarrying. So the two most two very important things in Jason's life are happening at the same time, and he has to make a choice of who am I going to be with.
Exactly.
And he chooses Val in this case because his patter is like, no, go to the heat. Like, obviously Val needs you because he can't survive this on his own, essentially. Yeah. And then Xan comes to the rescue and gives some of his blood. We love Xan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was it the first meeting between Xan and Euro? I believe it was.
I think so. Yeah.
And Xan helped Euro, obviously save the patter, minor. And I liked it. I loved them. I loved their book. Oh, what about at the end, not at the end, but like right before the heat, so the whole thing was Val fell in love with Jason, but then he realized he wanted Jason to have, every opportunity he could in his life. So he decides to decline the contract and not sign it. And like, I felt like that was heartbreaking in itself because Jason was 100% certain, like, we just had sex. We're gonna, like, it's just a formality at this point to sign the contract. And then he's like floored when Val was like, yeah, I'm not doing it. I can't. But a lot of like Val's desire to not sign the contract came from himself and like how his past made him feel like unclean. Like I had this one little snippet where he's like, he wanted to feel washed clean by Jason's unconditional acceptance and love. He'd be safe and loved, obviously, if he chose Jason, but at the same time, he felt like he was unclean, he was dirty, he wasn't pure enough for Jason. And like, that was just so heartbreaking, guys.
Yeah, and clearly this kind of goes into who's the monster in the story. The monster in part comes from Val, like his past and how he's not necessarily coping with it, or how his view of himself, his perception of himself is he undermines his own worth because of what happened to him, which is just terrible to read about. Like, poor guy. Like, and like, again, you understand why he feels that way because, we've all had things happen to us that we think devalue us as human beings and make us think that we don't deserve love or that, we don't deserve respect or...
And there's just another quote that I had that further, implements what you just said. Last night, though, this is Val, his inner thoughts. Last night, though, he'd felt it in his bones. Jason was good, soul deep good, and Val was ruined, and he couldn't let Jason's life be tainted by that. And it brings back to, the monster is his past, but if we go, like, dig deeper, it also could possibly
He thinks he's the monster. He thinks he's the monster.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Like, Val really thinks that he would sabotage Jason and his purity and his goodness with his own past.
Oh, it's so heartbreaking.
I know. And like, Val, you're not ruined.
You're not. There it goes.
You should put in the little ding, 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 little drum.
But I mean, we could also look at like the monster of the story also being the government, because that is like the suppression of the Omegas.
Yeah.
And like that suppression of Omegas also pushed Val into a situation that ruined him and made him think that he was unworthy of love and affection of Jason.
It's not just the monster for Omegas, but literally everyone. That's what this book is showing you. It's like Zen is an alpha who's also suffering under the
government
restrictions
suppression,
of this government. Euro, his whole job or part of his job is doing illegal abortions because people are going to die and he won't let that happen. He understands that these people need to deserve to live. If they don't want this pregnancy or it's going to kill them, I don't know, it's just, you see how this awful government is affecting everyone.
Exactly. And I agree with how we see ourselves, because while Val sees himself as ruined and sullied and all of this all of these words, but Jason is like, no, he's literally God's gift. Like, he is like the wolf god's gift. He is just, Val is his match in every single way, and he just loves him so much.
Yeah, because you see weakness as opposed to resilience
yeah,
in yourself.
exactly.
Whereas this whole story is about, no, like, you are so resilient. You went through so much shit, and because of this, and not just because of this, like, whether this would have happened to you or not, you would have deserved happiness, but, like, even more, not less, but more, because you've gone through shit, you know? Do you guys have a quote?
I have many.
Yeah.
But I mean, I shared two. But no, it was just like, I'm still caught up on the not signing the contract situation. So that's a scene where, like, Val tells Jason, like, his past, what happened to him, the gang rape and all of that. And Jason, obviously, rightly so, is left, like, astonished and lost for words, which, you know, anyone would be at, like, whenever they find a situation.
Would take advantage of someone who is in pain and
Exactly.
not capable of saying no, of, you know, giving consent.
Yeah, and so I just, like, this quote is more of, like, what happened in, like, after that situation.
Okay.
And when Val leaves Jason. Okay, so just listen. This is the angst, you know, we're bringing the angst back. Jason's vision swarmed with small black dots as Val stalked out of the room. Gulping air, Jason tried to breathe, but still the room spun. As the darkness got the better of him, he collapsed to sit on the floor. There he stayed, unable to fathom the stunning vacancy in his heart where so recently joy had lived. And I'm like, stabbing me in the chest would hurt a lot less than this quote. Because, like, yeah, Jason, he was blindsided by Val deciding to end their relationship before it even began.
Jason is such a baby.
I know.
We love a baby man.
And usually I don't,
man.
you know, I go for, like, the, like, what you think an alpha would be.
Yeah.
I usually go for that, you know, like the assertive, not controlling, but, like, possessive, intense men. Whereas Jason is an alpha, but he's not, like, the stereotypical alpha. He's a sweet, understanding, kind
It's a baby
boy.
alpha.
Yes, and then at the same time, like, it's so not what I usually go for. Like you said, like, usually I'd go for older, like, the older one being the alpha, the younger one being the omega. Like, that's the dynamic that I'm used to. And so it's just so surprising how much I loved it in this book. And usually I'm not big on books that make such a big deal out of age, because I just don't really believe in that. But in this one, it made sense, you know, like, you get why age is such a big issue for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just not the dynamic I usually go for, and I freaking loved it, you know? And because of that, like, it really opened my eyes to, like, well, maybe I should explore more of these books that kind of take something that you're used to and then flip it around and give you something else. Like, I'm thinking, I haven't read it yet, but I know Alexis Hall has a book called, it's like a huge book. For real. Okay. So Alexis Hall is a writer who has a book called For Real. In that book, from my understanding anyway, it's older man, younger man, but the older man is the submissive, and then the younger guy is the one that wants to become a dominant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, like, because of Slow Heat, I haven't read For Real yet, but because of Slow Heat and how much I liked the way the dynamics were switched, now I'm like, you know what? These books are so interesting. Interesting.
I feel like as readers, we like to stay in our bubble and like to stay in our comfort zone.
Especially as romance readers.
Yeah, but I feel like it's so needed sometimes to get out of your comfort zone, because this was a book not in my usual comfort zone, and I enjoyed the heck out of it.
I remember when Marge first discovered Empreg, like, she did a whole post about it, and she just she dove deep into Empreg. I remember, like, I was like,
she's
what
like, I'm doing the world a service, okay? You need to know this.
Literally, I think I said that in the post. I was like, listen, guys, I know this is gonna sound weird, but I found this little thing called Mpreg, and I think everyone should give it a try. Do yourself a favor and pick this book up.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear to God, do it. Like, you'll thank me later.
Yeah.
Like, you will. Because I've read a lot of Mpreg now, I can confirm that this series, what Leta Blake did here, is very unique. You know, like, it's the rest of Mpreg is more of like, at least of what I've read, is more of what you would expect. However, I will say that it's pretty consistently across the board, the issue of omegas not being seen as equals comes up times and times again. So I do think that there is work that especially this series is doing a lot of work. And you know, opening up about a lot of things that you don't necessarily see in romance, like miscarriages. When the frick do you see that in romance?
I can tell you, like, right off the bat, I've only seen it once, and that was in a Natasha Anders book, and it dealt with it in such a real and raw way. I think it's called The Ruthless Proposition. That one, honestly, broke my heart. I couldn't stop crying with that book, and that's literally the only book I've read that dealt with miscarriages. And that's kind of sad that it's only one book that I've read, and I'm a very avid romance reader. You all know that. So yeah, I think it's a situation and a topic that, you know, isn't discussed, as you said, and it should be.
Like, I can count on probably 3 fingers the number of books that I've read where miscarriages, abortion, or adoption were discussed, period. And it's like, this is a genre that's mainly for women and written by women, and so you would think that issues like this would be much more present. You know what I mean? Like, you would think, because believe it or not, 1 out of 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. 1 out of 4. So considering this is a genre written by women, you would really think that we would talk about this more, but we don't. And then it's such a subject that when it happens to you, you're lost because no one talks about it.
I also could think maybe that the reason why we don't see it as often in books is that people use books as a form of escapism. Like, people want to escape the real world and, you know, look at something that doesn't, like, reflect their own lives.
But
so it could
yes,
be that as
but
well.
we also read books to find ourselves in books.
True.
I think it goes 2 ways. Sometimes it's to escape, sometimes it's to find yourself and connect with someone that's like you.
In the romance community, they expect a happily ever after.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. It's like, say you have a heroine that has a miscarriage at some point in the book, and then you still give her a happy ever after. To me, that's saying there's better coming. You know, like, it will get better. You still deserve joy. You will still have joy. This is not the end of your story. Your story doesn't end in sadness and just loss. You know what I mean? Like, that to me is what, if we saw more of those books, that to me is what those stories would be saying, is
would reflect that.
You're going to find your bliss. You're going to find your joy. Just hang in there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I get it. Like, I don't know. I just wish we could say something like, oh yeah, I read like 10, you know? Instead of like, I've read maybe 1.
I mean, there could be a lot of books out there that do discuss it. I just haven't, like, explored that side of romance or, like, fiction in general.
I mean, how many romance books have you read?
I don't know. A lot. I can't even, like, tell you a number.
See? So, like, even if you weren't looking for it, I feel like you could have found it if it had been there, but I truly think it's not there. I really think, because we all read very varied stuff. We read all over the place. We read all kinds of subgenres of romance. So
Agreed.
We would have found it had it been there. But I truly think it's not really there.
But I also think it could be a situation, like, if we're talking about miscarriages in general, not just adoption or giving up your child, it could be, like, something that's so hard to write about, and, like, it just reaches emotions that, like, you know,
but don't we talk
difficult.
about women's pain constantly in romance?
We do.
So then think of the number of books that you've read where you saw on page or just mentioned that a woman was raped, that a woman was sexually harassed by a boss, by a coworker. Like, we put it there on page constantly, and like I can't even count the number of books that where a woman was sexually assaulted at some point in the book. So like,
Yeah.
I don't see how this is different. This is still about, I don't know, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's just like, the pain is already there, and we're already exploring it. Why are we not exploring this part of women's pain? Why are we silencing this part of it? Why are we keeping it such a taboo subject that we don't talk about, we don't want to see on pages? Like,
I will say, going back to Natasha Anders, she's the author of The Unwanted Wife and all of that. So her new book that just released, I think it's called The Best Next Thing. Anyway, so that one dealt with, like, yeah, it's like, the girl was sexually assaulted and, like, abused and all that stuff, but it dealt with, like, the aftermath of it. So it wasn't just, like, a plot device. It was, how does she pick up her life after all of that? And, like, it was such a well-researched and well-thought-out, you know, book that I felt like it looked at abuse in a different way than I'm used to. I'm so used to it being, like, a plot device and furthering, like, the relationship between the main couple. But this one was, like, the starting point of her life, basically.
Yeah, no, I think that a lot of romance novels do that, like, in the sense that they, like you said, like, it's about showing how do you evolve from this? How do you keep on living? How do you keep on laughing? How do you find joy in life again?
Exactly.
Like, and some and probably a lot of romance novels do that because as women we want to give the joy back to women, you know what I mean? Like, you want them to. So, but why not with things like miscarriages, you know? Why not with things like abortions? Why not with, you know, like, I can think of one book where the character gets pregnant and gives the child up for adoption, and it's A Different Blue by Amy Harmon.
Yeah.
And it was dealt with beautifully in that book. You understood why she had to do it. You understood that she was so young. She had no money, no place to live. No, like, she had no way of raising this child. And it's, the whole story is about how you cope with that. And especially because she still has somewhat of a relationship with this child. And now it's learning how to not see it as your own. And that's heartbreaking and devastating. But it's like, how would I not, like, that was the first book where I ever saw that subject being discussed, and it really opened my eyes, because before then I was like, I don't really understand why, like, I was never against adoption, obviously, but I was never put in the mind of someone who had to do it. So I was just like, oh, I mean, do it, but, like, I don't really understand, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas this book really made me see why. This is why it's important. And it's like, if someone's going through something similar, or someone has had to give up a child for adoption and they're struggling in, you know, this process, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, guys, but
No, I get what you mean.
write more of it.
No, just like, real issues that they need to be highlighted in books. I agree.
Do you guys get I call them the angst butterflies?
Yeah.
In your stomach, like, you get the angst butterflies when things get really angsty.
I get it right here on my chest. Like,
really?
My chest fucking hurts. Yeah.
I call it the phantom heartache syndrome.
Yeah.
That's what I call it, because, like, I literally feel my chest contract.
You really do.
Yeah.
When you get that feeling, I swear to God, the book could be a 3 stars, but if you give me that feeling at some point in it, you jump 1 star.
Yeah.
Like, right away. You get 1 more star. Like, I love that feeling.
Yeah.
Me too.
Like, you know, you're really into the story and you're really attached to the characters. And
when it hurts,
you just do something, you're like, oh,
it hurts so good. We sound like masochists.
Yeah.
We just love the pain. We love it.
We do.
Anyways, back to Slow Heat. That was like a way off turn, but it was in turn about Slow Heat in the sense where it talked about real issues, and like we'd like to see more real issues, which this book delved into quite well.
Yes. So, do you guys have any other quotes?
All right. So mine is, As Jason clung to him, Belle licked his lips, suddenly sure, and whispered the rest of the Omega's sacred words. We are Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. Jason lifted up to gaze down at Val earnestly, sealing the vow with the Alpha's response. We are Alpha and Omega, the everything.
I think my lines were a little bit after that. So it was, yes, Val admitted, his fingers digging into Jason's forearms. But you deserve the best, Jason. You deserve better than. And then Jason replies, we're Aeroscape. You are my best. That's all I needed to share, because I think ours tie in together us, and in the sense where, like, I feel like that was them verbally finally, like, you know, agreeing to what they have and, like, recognizing what they have.
And how precious that is.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone finds an Aeroscape. Like, most contracts are just between an Alpha and Omega that are not, like, bonded or should be bonded. Like, this is fated. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
I think it's them also just agreeing to how precious that is.
Yeah. All right. We also didn't answer our last two questions, but I feel like they're kind of.
I mean, could we live in this world? We couldn't. We're women.
We
Forget
wouldn't.
about it.
Yeah, I would. We would be dead.
Literally would not exist.
No.
We would be dead.
We'd be female cats, I think.
Yeah. The cat. Yeah.
I have a question then, since we can't live in that world as females.
Yeah.
So if we were to live in that world as males, what do you guys think you guys would be? Alpha, Omega, or Beta?
Well, in the Omega-verse in general, I think I'd rather be an Omega.
Yeah. Same. An Omega.
Because, you know, you can't not want to feel that knot.
Listen, just nurture me, take care of me.
Yeah.
When I go through a heat, like, that's a lot of fun.
See, I love the difference, Marge. You're talking about, like, the care. I'm talking about the knot.
The knot.
I mean, what do you think? Saying nurture me, take care of me is just a more fancy way of saying,
not me.
Give me the knot?
Please, daddy, fuck me through a heat, you know?
Yeah.
Can we also talk about the knot, though? Because we can't not talk about knotting.
Okay, so here's in part why, like, how this whole podcast came to be. And it's because we couldn't stop talking about this book because Seff found out how knots, like, how this concept came to be.
All right, I'm ready. Okay, so during, you know, a late night, I decided, how did this whole Omega-verse and the idea of knotting is when the Omega is going through their heat. It produces a lot of pheromones, and
so the uterus descends.
So the Omega's uterus, comes down, but also the Alpha has the ability to knot, in the sense where
don't they get bigger?
They do.
Okay, hold on. Let me explain this. So, because the uterus of the Omega drops...
Biology 101 with Seff.
I wish you could see my hand gestures right now. But anyways, so the Omega's uterus, their womb drops. You know, they're ready to be fertilized. They're ready to have that baby. So the Alpha, because of the heat and all the pheromones around them as they're, you know, in the throes of sex, their penis can form a knot, what is known as, like, it just basically swells up. It gets bigger to the point where, like, they get into the womb but aren't let out because the knot is restricting them from getting out of the
and
the
I thought that was just something that was invented.
However, during my late night researching, because I was curious
as
to know,
one
as
does.
one is, I found out that the whole idea of knotting derived from dogs and their penis and how they have sex. So the male dog, is able to produce a knot very similar to that of an alpha.
just know that in nature, there's a lot of weird penises. Just in case you didn't know, a duck stick is like a corkscrew. It's like a twirly thing. Why do I know these things? I don't want to know these things.
Have you seen a whale's penis?
Yes, a whale stick is like a mile fucking long. Like,
And it looks like a tongue.
Oh.
Anyways, we're going into like National Geographics at this point. Okay, and I feel like we've scarred our listeners to the point where they never want to return.
You scarred me. You scarred me. So I feel like it's only fair that everyone is scarred too. Because
but I thought it was really an interesting fact. Of course it scarred me, but I don't have a dog.
I haven't read Mpreg since you told me that. So I don't know if like subconsciously this really scarred me to the point where I'm not sure I can go back to it.
So wait, I have a question. You've read M.F. Omega verse books, right?
Oh, I have.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Where it's the female and the male? Is there nodding there too?
Oh yeah, they're nodding. Yeah, I read one series. I forgot what it was called, but yeah, she was an Omega and he was the Alpha, and she has like, you know, the regular reproductive system. Like nothing was genetically altered or anything, and obviously he's the Alpha. Anyways, yeah, the nodding sounded so painful.
Oh God.
Like so painful. Like I was scarred, but also at the same time I was kind of intrigued because also keep in mind this was after me reading the dog nodding. But I was just like, how is this happening? Like how, like it just sounded like he was ripping her apart on his knot.
It's fascinating though how every book you read with nodding, they do it differently. It's not, there's not like a across the board like a way that everyone's like, here's how nodding works. Like in some books it's like as long as they're inside, it's like they're constantly coming, just constantly coming. And then in other times it's like, oh, like it's after the fact, so like they're just stuck together and it just makes for really awkward funny moments because it's like, well, I can't get out, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna have to stay here a while.
They really can, and it sounds painful. But I have a question. Like, about, like, the anatomy of it.
But wait, just to answer your question, S, because not all, I've read Omega Verse that doesn't have nodding.
Oh.
So it's not all.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, any werewolf book where there's omegas, betas, alphas, it's not necessarily nodding. So, just, but what's your question?
Sorry, mine is more of, like, we don't even need to include this in the podcast. But, it was just the anatomy of it. Like, where on the penis is the knot? Is it at the base?
The top.
Or is it at, like, the head?
Like, you know, like
the
I think it's the base.
It's the base.
At least in this book it is.
They mention it in this one where his base expands.
But again, that's the kind of thing that changes from one book to another. So, but in this book, you're right. It was the base.
So it was the base. So, like, the one closest to, like, their, like...
Yeah.
Their abdomen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in some cases, I've seen it where it was the tip.
The tip.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
I have a question for the expert here on dog anatomy. On the dog, why do I want to know this? I don't want to know this, but I'll ask anyway. Is it the tip or the base?
I actually don't know. Let's research.
I think it's the base as well.
I think it's the base. I think it's common knowledge that it's the base.
It's the base. Because they get stuck when it's a female dog and a male dog. They get stuck for a while, and I think it's the base.
Yeah. Okay. Are you ready? I found the answer for dogs. Okay. Male canines have a locking bulbous glandus, a spherical area of erectile tissue at the base of the penis. During copulation, and only after the male's penis is fully inside the female's vagina, the bulbous glandus becomes engorged. When the vagina subsequently contracts, the penis becomes locked inside the female. So it's at the base of their dingling.
Please delete your search history right now. Or you might have some really awkward questions to answer later on. Yeah. I just want to know, like, what your FBI person is thinking right now. looking at what you looked through.
The hell
Ooh,
she's
Seff
searching.
Seff is researching dog penises.
And my question literally into Google was like, do dogs not? And then it fully gave me the description that I
The
needed.
answer. Yeah, because a lot of people want to know. Like, it just comes right up. It's a very commonly asked question.
Yeah.
Do dogs
Exactly.
not?
Anyways, so just it's fun fact.
I mean, the more you know.
I feel like we should just end this episode at this point because I don't know how we top dogs nodding. That one I didn't even mean. Does anyone have any closing remarks on slow heat?
Read this book, people. Read
Yes.
this book.
Just read this book,
Just read it.
guys. Like, I know it sounds wild, and it is. It is. It's outrageous, wild. You know, you don't want to believe in it. And yet, you'll get great angst and great characters and a great love story and just so much heart. Just read it.
But also, I know the idea of, what we just talked about might scar you for life, and you might never ever want to pick up a book that deals with nodding. Just forget what we said and just read it.
Also, the audiobook is really good.
Oh, it
I
is?
listened to the audiobook this second time around, and
Okay,
good.
that's good because I didn't even think of, picking up the audiobook.
All right. Well, on this note, if we haven't scarred you too much, please come back next week for the next episode, which will be on the next Immortals After Dark book, which is No Rest for the Wicked.
Not to fear, there are no knots in that book.
Yeah.
No knots, but some angst. Some angst. So the angst is staying forever.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for listening. You can find us on Twitter at the RTM Pod or on Instagram at Romancing the Monsters Podcast, or you can email us at romancingthemonsterspodcast@gmail.com. You can find me at Foes and Lovers on both Twitter and Instagram.
And you can find me at But This Book on Twitter and Instagram.
And you can find me, Seff, on both Twitter and Instagram at Pros with Woes.
And there you go.
We hope you enjoyed this week's podcast episode. And
We
we'll
hope
see
you had a laugh.
Anyways.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye.
That was a terrible goodbye. I've
Yeah.
never said goodbye more awkwardly in my life.